either due to being given a bit more time to breathe when it came to the story being told, or just being allowed to break free from the restrictions often placed on them by Vince McMahon and his cronies. Absolutely every All Elite version of these previous WWE one-on-one encounters benefited from going down in the hottest promotion on planet Earth later down the road.
Oh, and just to address the nightmare elephant in the room, this list was largely put together when Cody Rhodes was still very much All Elite. But that still doesn't take anything away from what he did whilst rolling with TK and the gang, so...
I'm Gareth from What Culture Wrestling, and here are 10 matches AEW did better than WWE. Number 10, Dustin Rhodes vs Jake Hager. Of the many names given the care and attention they were desperately lacking whilst plying their trade under the World Wrestling Entertainment banner, Jake Hager acted as the first sign of hope in the land of All Elite. Brought into Chris Jericho's inner circle on night 1 of AEW Dynamite, gone was the all-American goof we'd grown used to seeing in Vinnie Mac's empire. In his place was a no-nonsense powerhouse with MMA pedigree. And never was that more prevalent than during Hager's skirmish with Dustin Rhodes on the first ever Revolution pay-per-view, as the two one-time WWE stars went to war in early 2020. While their previous WWE main event offering quietly went under the radar back in 2013, with Goldust besting Jack Swagger via Final Cut in that forgettable outing, the same could not be said for their next battle. In Hager's AEW debut at the pay-per-view, the Bellator fighter violently dispatched Rhodes via arm triangle post-low blow to the wrestling legend. Sure, it was hardly match of the night, no prizes for guessing what was, but it still made for a more exciting battle than their WWE work ever did. Number 9, CONTI vs Santana Garrett. You'd be forgiven for not initially understanding the significance of having CONTI duke it out against Santana Garrett on a recent buy-in for AEW Rampage. But with that YouTube aired match actually going up against an episode of SmackDown on the night of October 15th last year, it felt like too much of a coincidence to have Garrett take part in only her second ever AEW bout at that time on one of the most significant head-to-head nights the All Elite vs WWE rivalry has seen thus far. For those unaware, Conti and Garrett actually battled it out in what was NXT's first ever overall quarter-hour win when going up against Dynamite back on the November 6, 2019 edition of the Black and Gold show. However, that bout was widely panned due to the pair's in-ring work. When it came to their buy-in battle, though, the two put on a much more enjoyable contest and highlighted exactly how far they'd come in just under 2 years, likely acting as another cheeky dig at WWE and their all-round failures in the developmental department as of late. Number 8, Cody Rhodes vs Jake Hager. Jumping to that period in time when the American Nightmare was determined to put on a TNT title show in front of next to nobody in attendance. Coming during the 2020 Fyter Fest, the then TNT champion was very much in the thick of the inaugural run for the vibrant red strap, already besting the likes of Jungle Boy, Mark Quinn and Ricky Starks to retain the title. But in Jake Hager, he found his most difficult obstacle to date, with the monstrous Inner Circle man picking up his first ever All Elite defeat at the hands of the AEW EVP in what was arguably Week 1's match of the night. And with Cody managing to clutch hold of victory whilst locked in the jaws of defeat that were Hager's massive biceps thanks to a sly pin, this dramatic conclusion quickly eclipsed the duo's previous WWE outings on the likes of SmackDown and Superstars. When your other clashes on those aforementioned shows consisted of a far less effective roll-up and lukewarm win for Swags, it's not hard to see why their All Elite fight easily ranks highest. Number 7, Jon Moxley vs Brodie Lee. The tragically late Jon Huber's truly mesmerizing work whilst under the All Elite banner will undoubtedly stand the test of time. And to go with his captivatingly gritty battles with Cody Rhodes over the TNT Championship, another brawl with a former WWE face gave us arguably his strongest one-on-one affair ever. Coming to blows with Jon Moxley in a war over the AEW World Championship at Double or Nothing, the two warriors beat 7 lumps of crap out of one another in their pursuit to walk out of Daly's place holding the prestigious strap. But Mox's TKO victory only told half the story, as Brodie Lee proved he could hang at the very top of the card, and just how underutilized he'd actually been whilst working for Vinnie Mac. Never was that more evident than in the sheer difference of match quality, physicality, and overall drama seen in this All Elite battle compared to their Dean Ambrose vs Luke Harper contests, even with one of those collisions being a never-ending Extreme Rules street fight in 2015. Number 6, CM Punk vs Matt Sydal. Hate to make you feel a tad old, but this next next entry sees a pair of in-ring favorites picking up their one-on-one rivalry where they left off, a whopping 11 years earlier. Back then, Evan Bourne was the rising star of WWE television, flying around the ring like a lunatic, with CM Punk very much acting as part of Vinnie Mac's on-screen furniture at this point. Jump forward just over a decade and a returning best in the world, fresh off of 7 years of inactivity, felt that indie veteran Matt SYDAL would offer yet another chance to dust off the ring rust on an episode of Rampage. And while it most definitely isn't Punk's strongest match since debuting in AEW last year, it did add more fuel to the fire that was the story of the chick magnet struggling to get up to speed in the squared circle after such a lengthy layoff, with it taking him longer than expected to see off the one-time WWE high flyer. Sweaty, dramatic, and emphatically ended with a GTS out of nowhere, their WWE bouts simply pale in comparison. Number 5, Pac versus Jon Moxley. Arguably two of the most fed-up names to slam Vince McMahon's door shut on the way out, wasted little time letting the world know exactly what they'd been missing whilst being under WWE contract for the majority of their time in the mainstream, with Pac becoming one of the first major AEW acquisitions in January 2019, and Jon Moxley joining him a few months later. The two set about beating the piss out of all who stepped in their way en route to a thrilling Dynamite draw, and an absolute barn burner whilst cruising the 7 seas. It was that latter high-octane bruising fight that culminated in Mox earning himself a shot at Chris Jericho's AEW World Championship, paradigm shifting Pac into next week for the all-important W. Brilliantly, the pair did once also go at it on an episode of what would ultimately become AEW Dynamite's direct rival, with the duo battling it out over the US Championship on an episode of NXT. In typical WWE fashion, said bout ended in a DQ thanks to some Shield shenanigans, but thankfully no such issues were presented by the time Mox collided with Pac later down the road. Number 4, Dustin Rhodes versus Cody Rhodes. Another two names who seemed hell-bent on making a statement at WWE's expense upon parting ways with the company, also just so happened to be blood, and shed an awful lot of it in what is still seen as one of AEW's most gripping contests to date. Following through on his decree years earlier of wanting to get the attitude out, while still donning the Stardust name, Cody Rhodes made it his mission to see off the older generation, as the All Elite Revolution finally got underway, keeping those watching on inside of the MGM Grand Garden Arena on the edge of their seats from start to finish. Dustin and his American Nightmare sibling ultimately produced what would become the first ever 5-star classic AEW bout on the night. It's hard to believe that this is the same duo who took part in a 1.5-star crowd killer at WWE Fastlane a few years earlier. But if ever there was a sign that a significant change to Western mainstream wrestling was on its way, this was likely it. Number 3, Chris Jericho versus Jon Moxley. Returning to the already mentioned resurgence of a one-time Shield member, Jon Moxley's seismic rerun opposite former WWE colleague Pac would pave the way for another walk down memory lane for the eventual AEW World Champion. Stepping up to Chris Jericho once again, Mox was this time faced with the odds being dramatically stacked against him, as Le Champion and his inner circle frequently did everything in their power to weaken the megastar in the lead up to their Revolution 2020 main event. But even wrestling the majority of the match while seemingly visually impaired by an eye patch couldn't stop Mox from picking up the crowd-popping victory on the night, as an already stellar evening of action was triumphantly signed off with a new babyface AEW top strap holder. And while the two's dances inside of the sports entertainment sphere were hardly terrible, they're more notably remembered for the odd thumbtack spot and Mitch the Plant than critically acclaimed wars between two bloodthirsty top-level main eventers. Number 2, Cody Rhodes versus Chris Jericho. Though it may be a bit tough to remember now, what with him slowly morphing into one of the most jarring elements of Rampage and Dynamite in recent times, early into AEW's run as a weekly episodic program, Chris Jericho was one of the promotion's true leading lights. And fresh off of 2 absolute bangers against Kenny Omega and Hangman Page, winning both contests at Double or Nothing and All Out 2019 respectively, the reigning AEW World Champion was faced with his first rival of his WWE past on All Elite shores, that being the one-time dashing Cody Rhodes, a star who had come up against Le Champion under very different circumstances during the two's WWE runs together, battling it out under the less glamorous lights of SmackDown and main events in the early 2010s. Safe to say, it didn't take much to top what came before it when it came to the Stars follow-up, but about laced with heart-in-your-mouth drama, a bump that still produces winces to this day, heartbreaking AEW title consequences for the American Nightmare, and a jaw-dropping heel turn from MJF post-match raised the bar and then some. Number 1, Bryan Danielson versus MIRO. From one full-gear WWE rerun to the next, 2021 saw 2 stars who could once hold claim to being a couple of the most over names in Vince McMahon's company take each other to their physical limit. And though this was hardly the first time the Savage Kick-wielding legends have come to blows with high stakes on the line, battling it out on SmackDown over a Money in the Bank ladder match spot in 2018, for example, their All Elite all-time alternative made that bout look like a blissful walk in the park. Reveling in his reignited passion for kicking people's heads in, Danielson refused to hold back with his various kicks, boots, knees, and body-breaking submissions. But not to be outdone, Miro matched the American Dragon's violent tendencies by brutally reminding his one-time WWE pal what power he possesses in his own merciless legs and bulging Bulgarian biceps. Getting revenge for falling in that aforementioned Money in the Bank qualifier though, it was Danielson who walked out of Minneapolis with a chance to take on a Hangman. But the real winners were the fans who got to see two often reined-in ass-kickers embrace their inner savages on a pay-per-view stage. It's what All Elite was made for, dammit. And that's our list. Know of any other matches AEW did better than WWE that I've missed? Let me know all about them in the comments section right down below, and do not forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button while you're at it. Also, make sure to head on over to whatculture.com and find more incredible articles just like the one this video you're watching this very moment is based on. I've been Gareth from What Culture Wrestling. Thank you as always for clicking on this video today, and I'm sure I'll see you very, very soon. Bye bye.